With the release of the latest film from Sony Pictures Animation, I thought now would be a good time to name my favorite films from that studio over at Culver City and now Vancouver. While not on the top of many people's list of favorite animation studios, I still find great enjoyment out of many of the films they've produced since their inception. So here are my top 5 favorite movies from Sony Pictures Animation. Smurfs: The Lost Village. While I did not mind the first Smurfs hybrid movie, I did find it was a bit of a wasted opportunity not to explore more of the Smurfs world, rather than going the cliched Portal to New York plotline. With The Lost Village, Kelly Asbury crafted a worthy Smurfs adaptation that they should have done in the first place. This is a beautifully animated and respectful take on the Smurfs, paying sincere tribute to Peyo's creation. Asbury really amps up the fantasy and really takes us on a journey filled with amazing sights and creatures. Care has been taken to match the illustration style of Peyo's comics, but a touching story has also been crafted, highlighting Smurfette's anxieties about not being a natural-born Smurf. The film explores how these motivate Smurfette and expands on the character beyond just being the girl Smurf. Gargamel provides plenty of hilarity, and the animation has that elastic quality I adore in Sony's animated films. Asbury also smartly dials down on the Smurf speak, one of the few departures the film makes from the comics. The film is also not afraid of putting the Smurfs in genuine danger and making Gargamel an actual threat at a couple of points. As a Smurfs fan, this gave me the Smurfs movie I've always wanted, but it works as an animated delight in its own right, too. The Pirates, Band of Misfits. I know what some of you may be thinking. Isn't this an Aardman film? What does Sony Animation have to do with this? Quite a bit, actually. They shared story artists. The CG effects, including the water, were handled by Sony Animation and Sony Imageworks, and Sony was even the one to give the go-ahead to use stop motion after they saw the ship models. The executives and Sony Animation heads would also help supervise the production of the film. So yes, this would absolutely be called a co-production, and it's quite a hilarious one. What's immediately striking are the sight gags. There are so many clever bits and pieces and Easter eggs happening in the background. The humor is sharp and witty, and the way the script utilizes historical figures like Charles Darwin and Queen Victoria creates lots of opportunity for comedy. And yet, through it all is still a touching story, the friendship between a bird and a pirate. Captain, that is. For some reason, The Pirates Band of Misfits is a rather underrated and underseen stop-motion film, and I wish more people would talk about it. From a script, animation, and humor standpoint, it definitely stands out. And don't get me started on the set pieces, especially one in Doran's house that must have taken a crazy amount of time to prepare. It had been 12 years since Peter Lord last directed a feature film, and oh, what a triumphant return it was. Arthur Christmas. Yes, this Aardman co-production also had a heavy involvement from Sony Animation, mostly on the story and animation fronts. This is an immensely heartwarming take on Santa Claus, expanding and modernizing the concept, but still retaining what makes him a symbol of Christmas goodness. I like that there's no villain here, as it's mainly about 4 members of the Claus family and their different views of what Christmas means. The family dynamic is nicely portrayed here, with the script proving funny and sharp. The depiction of the operation is quite brilliant, with the film opening with an excellent sequence showing the elves and Santa at work. However, what ultimately sells this film as a delight is the heart. It never gets too schmaltzy or overly sentimental, rather letting the characters turn this into an emotional story. The brilliant humor, so characteristic of Aardman, is all over Arthur Christmas, and this film so nicely combined the technical wizardry of the Sony Animation team with Aardman's British sensibilities. It's still a fairly underrated Christmas film, but I think it's one of the best, and deserves to be watched every holiday season. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. This is a film I honestly did not have any real expectations for before I saw it, and I did not know what to expect. What I got was a marvelously creative and hilarious disaster movie. This is a pure, fast-paced comedy that throws so many different types of jokes at you, and most of them stick. Phil Lord and Christopher Miller brought a lot of their sensibilities from their short-lived series Clone High onto this movie and crafted a hilarious film which also succeeds because of the multiple layers within its story. Using Judy and Ron Barrett's book as a basis, Lord and Miller create all sorts of unforgettable images and find a million creative ways to utilize food. However, they also put together a funny ensemble of outlandish characters, each with their own arcs, as the script cleverly peels away and shows their true form. They manage to take the archetypes of a disaster movie and play around with them, whether it's the news reporter who's secretly really smart, or the mayor who gets more and more greedy as he sees dollar signs raining down. Through it all, Lord and Miller cleverly inserts some strong subtext into the script, including the difficulty of conversation and disconnect that can occur between a father and a son, and how moderation is extremely important when considering what foods to eat. Kudos too to the effects and animation teams for how they brilliantly portrayed the various food in the film. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs is what I like to call one of my happy movies. I put it on and I just find myself instantly laughing and in a good mood. I think it's definitely one of the sharpest and inventive animated comedies of the past 10 years. But my favorite Sony Pictures animation movie is Surf's Up. While Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs works partly because of its fast-paced comedy, Surf's Up works because of how laid back it is. Ash Brandon and Chris Buck took a rather unique approach with this story of surfing penguins by making it in the style of a documentary. And they did not merely give it a handheld camera style and have characters give on-camera interviews. The pacing, the editing, the use of archival photography and footage, and even the music capture exactly the feel of a legitimate documentary. Having the voice actors record together also gives the script an impromptu feel. However, the filmmakers don't merely rely on the documentary gimmick. They create an actual story, with Cody Maverick wanting to be a surfer, and they impressively avoid many of the cliches one might expect. The mentor-student relationship he has with Big Z is not an easy one, and the film goes on to show how in over his head Cody is. The relationships we see on screen feel genuine, and a large reason is also because Surf's Up is willing to slow down and just have conversations. And these conversations are not there for padding. They succeed in developing and building these characters and their conflicts. The subplots involving Chicken Joe and Mikey the Bird also provide their own moments of hilarity. Surf's Up is an animated film that is disappointingly under the radar, despite its Oscar nomination and Chris Buck later going on to direct Frozen. Nonetheless, I think it, along with the other films on this list, show what makes Sony Pictures Animation stand out, which is their simple concepts and how they're able to take them in creative and unexpected directions. They're a studio full of talented artists and filmmakers, and I always look forward to seeing what they come up with. Whether it's more adventures in a monster-filled hotel, a beloved superhero swinging over New York City, or the very first Christmas. See you next time.